Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. This week I'm going to review the book called My Lady Jane. It's a thick one, just so you know, and it's by Cynthia Hand, Brodi, Ashton, and Jodi Meadows. It's a collaborative effort. All of these are all published writers, and it took me a long time to get started on this. I've had it for a long time. I got it from thrift books, and I thought, oh, I'll get started on it. I'll get started on it. And I kept putting it off. And then I got started on it and I just really struggled with it because it's just a very strange book. It's funny because they kind of play on the whole story of my Lady Jane Grey. So it's a historical fiction, but it's also, I would consider it hysterical fiction because they play with humor in it and make alternative history in this book. I suppose you could say that about all historical fiction. But most historical fiction does have elements of fact in it. And this does too. I think the hardest thing for me, it's funny that I had it over, my family was here for Christmas last week, a little early. And my daughter saw this book on my desk and she goes, oh, I've read that. And the first words out of her mouth were, I didn't like it. And I'm like, I'm really struggling to get it done. I can't say that I didn't like it. Like, she was pretty much adamant she didn't like it. I feel like there were some parts of it that were fun, and of course I finished the book, of course, so because I usually always do. But there's a couple of things about it that really bugged me, and one of them was the narrators were really way too intrusive, but that also may have been a ploy on their part. No, it's a intentional that they were in way too interruptive. And I think they just tried too hard. There were so many, references to Shakespeare lines. And I just thought, that's a little bit of overkill. And it's just like I felt like they were trying too hard to be funny. And I thought, you could have just left that go because, I'm sure as they were writing it together, they thought it was hysterical. But I just thought, oh my gosh. It's just like when someone goes, womp womp, after a bad joke. And I thought I kept having that sound in my head because I'm like, oh my gosh, that was totally unnecessary. And I've never been a big fantasy fan. I've learned to like some fantasy. There's some that I've read so far from this channel that I've really liked and I was really engaged in. And I started with Six of Crows and I really enjoyed that. And this one is just like you have the Ethians, I think I pronounced that right, who are people that turn into animals. And so, there was a little bit of element of surprise in that with that element of the book. But to think about King Henry VIII being a lion, that his animal was a lion and he would eat the court jester or bearers of bad news, which was funny. And there's just some funny parts of dealing with the characters who turn into animals, but that also brought some of the surprises that got me through the book because I was just like, I don't know if I can finish this because it just goes on and on. To me it drags a bit, but as far as the sense of humor of the writers, it comes through pretty clearly. But like I said, in some regards, they tried too hard, and it was just a little bit of overkill. But they carry the story, and I think the funniest part is the idea that the Lady Jane Grey's love of her life is a horse, and so that part is they have a lot of fun with that idea too. So it's an entertaining book if you can sustain your disbelief, but also sustain this story is so drawn out. I'm just like, really. I think they could have probably written and got to the point a lot quicker. I'm going to read, this is chapter, and they're different, that's from different perspectives. You have Edward, who is the king, and he's dying, supposedly. And then you have Lady Jane Grey, and then you have Gifford, who is her Dudley, who is, she's been betrothed to Edward, has said she has to marry him. And so this is, not quite halfway through the book. And she has written, Lady Jane has written a letter to Edward, about the situation because Gifford or G, he's a horse throughout the whole day, and he can't control when he can change back and forth. And some of the Ethians can, they can switch, pretty easily. But he is like, I'm a horse during the day, and so he only can be with his bride in the evening. And so that alone can kind of give you an idea just the kind of comical situations we get into because the groom is a horse. So Lady Jane writes to her cousin, and her and Edward are cousins. They've been very close their whole lives. And so that relationship, I think the authors did a good job of developing that relationship between Edward and Lady Jane Grey. And then they just have a whole lot of fun with developing the relationship between Lady Jane and Gifford or Lord G. So here's the letter that she decides to write Edward a letter about Gifford. Dearest Edward, I hoped to visit you in this morning, but when I arrived at the palace, I was informed that you are not receiving visitors. I must confess my surprise and disappointment that you would not see even me, but I know there must be a good reason, and I suspect that this self-imposed isolation means that your illness is taking its toll. For this I am so very sorry, cousin, and I wish there was something I could do to make you well again. I'm sure you must be wondering what it is I came to see you about this morning, mere hours after my wedding. My dear cousin, the wedding is precisely the topic I wanted to discuss with you, or rather, my newly acquired husband. Gifford is a horse. I'm certain you knew this, what with your referrals to his condition and assumptions that I would find it intriguing. What I cannot fathom is why you chose not to tell me. We've always told each other everything, have we not? I consider you to be my most trusted confidant, my dearest and most beloved friend. Why then did you neglect this rather critical detail? It doesn't make sense. But perhaps in this too, I wonder now, you felt you had a good reason. I hope that we will be able to speak more on this subject when I return from my honeymoon in the country. All my love, Jane. Edward sighed. He carefully folded the letter and laid it on the bedside table. Over the past 3 days, he had read Jane's letter no fewer than 100 times, and each time he felt as though she were sitting beside him, chastising him, of course, but they're all the same. He closed his eyes and mentally composed a letter back to Jane. It went something like this. Dearest Jane, sorry I made you marry a horse. Your father-in-law is trying to kill me. Send help. But Edward knew that he could expect no help from Jane. Any message he might write to inform her of his predicament or warn her of Lord Dudley's insidious intentions for both Jane and the kingdom would surely be intercepted by the Duke. Even if the messenger did somehow manage to make it out of the place, out of the palace, it would likely fall into Gifford's hands, and Edward could only assume Jane's husband was in league with his father. So here you have a little bit of not a spoiler, but get an idea about King Edward's situation. He's young, he's not very old, and that follows the course of history too. That King Edward, I think, became king at 9 or something like that. But yes, so Lord Dudley, Lady Jane's father-in-law, is not a good person. He is, um, um, I won't say anymore. He's trying, yeah, as Edward said, he's trying to kill me. And so now the story takes a shift because, about a third of the way through, you're like, oh, so Lord Dudley was all this time saying, I'm doing the best things for you. I'm so sorry you're dying of, the affliction or consumption at that time. But is that really true? And so there's some mystery involved in this as well. And so now, would I recommend that this be taught in high school? No, I would not. I wouldn't teach this as a whole class text. This is more like a fun read for, a supplemental book. I'm not even sure. I mean, I did it. I can't recall if I had the students do this as a small group book or if this was one that a partnered students did as a book talk. You could do this as a book talk if someone wanted to read it. And I don't even think you could convey very well everything that goes on in this book. So you could do a 5-minute book talk on this. I think it'd be good. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it for a whole class reading, and I wouldn't recommend it for a small group. I'd say that I would, keep this one solely for just a supplemental reading, because it's really a quirky book, and only a certain kind of reader is going to really enjoy this book. And so that would be my advice, is that it would be a supplemental book that you keep on your shelf for a student who might be interested in that kind of genre. So thank you for joining me. Next week, I've already done the Hunger Games. You'll have to go back and see my videos to find the first Hunger Games. But I'm going to continue on and do Catching Fire and Mockingjay. And then hopefully I get a copy of uh, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And then the last one is Sunrise on the Reaping. So I'm looking forward to reacquainting myself with the other books and then reading the new ones. I haven't read the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Thank you for joining me. See you next time. Bye.